The Grand Hall of the Galactic Union was filled with light, music, and colors from every corner of the galaxy. Leaders from powerful worlds had gathered in shining robes and battle armor. At the center, on a high crystal platform, stood a girl, no taller than a child. Her name was Princess Cerelia of Velmaris, a royal of one of the oldest and richest empires in the stars. She looked delicate, like a soft breeze could carry her away. Her skin shimmered like moonlight, her eyes glowing silver, and her long white hair floated behind her like silk. She wore the ceremonial dress of her kind, thin silver threads that sparkled with starlight. Every detail of her appearance showed grace, beauty, and innocence. But none of the alien males looked at her with desire or respect. They looked away, some with disgust, some with boredom. The Emperor of Velmaris, her father, raised his voice for all to hear. "Today, my daughter, is offered an alliance. Who among you, warriors of the galaxy, will claim her hand and share her throne?" The hall remained silent. Not one male moved. One by one, the aliens whispered to each other. Some covered their mouths, laughing. Others made rude signs with their hands. A few nobles shook their heads in clear refusal. "She is too small." A reptilian warlord hissed. "Unfit for strong airs," said a beast man from the Fang worlds. "I would crush her bones by accident," laughed a bulky insectoid. Princess Cerelia stood frozen. She could feel her throat tighten, but she did not lower her head. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her back straight, just as she was trained. Behind her smile, pain grew sharper. She had known this might happen. Velmari females were smaller than most races, and she had always been the smallest of her kind. Despite her royal blood, many believed she was weak. She had never been chosen, never admired, never truly wanted. This was her final chance, a royal offering to the galaxy. If she was rejected today, her fate would be sealed forever. The Emperor's face twitched with anger, but he forced a calm voice. "Surely among you there is one who sees value in purity, in alliance with the royal house of Velmaris." Again, no one spoke. Whispers turned into low laughter. One alien shouted, "Why don't you offer her as a maid instead?" The crowd roared. In cruel laughter, Cerelia's hands trembled slightly. Her eyes stung, but she did not cry. The shame was too heavy, but she had lived with it for years. She closed her eyes for a moment, wishing the ceremony would end, wishing she could disappear. High above, near the back of the hall, stood a single human male. He wore no armor, no crown. His clothes were plain, a dark jacket, worn boots, and a small bag at his side. He looked out of place among the powerful and proud. His name was Ethan Kale, a human explorer and former soldier. He had come only to witness the event, to observe the alien customs. Nothing more. But something had changed the moment Cerelia stepped forward. He had seen fear behind her steady eyes, strength behind her silence. He saw the way she held herself despite the humiliation, the way she refused to break, even when everyone around her laughed. He stepped forward. His boots echoed across the quiet hall. Aliens turned to see the strange movement. Some blinked in surprise, others in confusion. A few chuckled. "A human?" Someone muttered, "What is he doing?" The Emperor narrowed his eyes. Who dares interrupt this royal moment? Ethan stood tall. His voice was calm but firm. "Name is Ethan Kale, citizen of Earth. I wish to offer myself for the princess." The room exploded with noise. Laughter turned to shock, shock to anger. "You? You are not even noble," one shouted. "Is this a joke?" barked another. "Humans are wild beasts," a noble growled. Cerelia stared at the human. Her heart raced for a different reason now. No one had ever stood for her. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, not with pity, but curiosity, respect, and something else she couldn't name. The Emperor's voice thundered. "You are no warrior, no royal, no legend. You think you can claim my daughter just because others will not?" Ethan's answer came steady. "I don't care about bloodlines or ranks. I saw a woman standing alone when others turned their backs. That is enough for me." The crowd erupted again, but this time it was mixed anger, confusion, and something else too, something dangerous. Cerelia took a step forward. Her voice, small but clear, rang across the hall. Let him try. Every eye turned to her. The Emperor looked at his daughter, shocked. The hall fell into dead silence. Cerelia stared at Ethan, the only male who did not look away from her. And in that moment, the stars outside seemed to shine brighter. The twin moons of Velmaris were rising slowly, casting soft blue light across the royal city. Inside the palace, deep in the chambers where only servants and shadows walked, Princess Cerelia sat alone, still wearing the same ceremonial dress that had brought her nothing but humiliation. Her silver gown now felt heavier than ever. Like chains around her tiny frame, the grand court had emptied hours ago, but no joy echoed in its halls. The laughter of nobles still haunted her mind, cruel voices that said she was too small, too weak, too useless. Her rejection had been made public across the stars, broadcasted for every allied world to see. No suitor, not one, had accepted her hand, except a human. A human, of all creatures. She could still hear his voice, calm and steady, breaking through the mockery like a blade through fog. He had stood alone, and yet he stood taller than any warrior in that hall. Ethan Cale, he had said his name was. She had whispered for small words in return, let him try. That single sentence had shaken the court now. In the silence of her chambers, her father's words returned like thunder. If the moons rise and no noble accepts you, you will be stripped of your royal name and sent to the barren colony on Trelix 7, where infertile daughters are kept until death. That place was a graveyard for forgotten women. Cold winds blew across frozen stone. No songs, no warmth, only broken souls walking beneath dying skies. She had seen it once as a child, and the memory had never left her. If she was sent there, she would never return. Her eyes turned toward the night sky through the open crystal window. One moon had already reached its peak. The second followed closely. Her time was slipping away, like sand between trembling fingers. A soft knock broke the silence. It wasn't her maids. They always entered without knocking. She stood slowly, unsure, and opened the door herself. Ethan stood there. He was not dressed like a knight or a hero. He wore the same jacket, a little torn at the shoulder. His boots were dusty. A light scar crossed one cheek, but his eyes, calm and clear, held the kind of strength that didn't need armor. I didn't think I'd be allowed inside, he said quietly. They will punish you if they find you here, she replied, but she didn't step back. He smiled. Not mocking, just soft. Then I guess I'll leave a good impression while I can. Cerelia let him in. She didn't know why. Maybe because he was the only one who had looked at her without fear or disgust. Maybe because he had dared to speak when every other voice went silent. Or maybe because deep inside, she didn't want to face the moons alone. I heard what your father said, Ethan began, glancing at the glowing clock on the wall. They're planning to send you away if no one else steps up. She nodded, lowering her gaze. A disgrace like me has no place in royal bloodlines. Who told you that? She asked. She blinked. The nobles, the scholars, the council, even my own family. I asked who. He cut in gently, not how many. She hesitated, her lips parting slightly. She had never questioned it. She had believed it because everyone around her had. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Let me take that burden away. Cerelia looked up, confused. What do you mean? I asked the Emperor for a trial. One of your customs, a challenge to prove myself worthy? He agreed, though he thinks it will kill me. He's sending you to Mordoxa, isn't he? He nodded. No one comes back from those caves, Ethan, she whispered, panic rising in her throat. Even trained warriors burn inside. I'm not going in as a warrior, he said. I'm going in as someone who believes you're worth fighting for. Tears touched her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. Why would you do this? You don't know me. It's all enough. He answered. She stared at him for a long moment, then looked up at the moons. The second had almost reached its peak. When it did, she would be erased from the empire. I don't want to disappear, she whispered. Then I won't let you, he said, turning toward the door. As he left, she reached out and caught his sleeve. Her fingers were small against his rough jacket. "Ethan!" she said, her voice shaking. "What if you don't come back?" He paused, then looked over his shoulder. "Then I hope you remember that someone stood for you when no one else did." He walked away into the night, toward the deadly fire caves of Mordaxa, and Ceraliah stood there, alone again, but no longer empty inside. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her, and now she prayed to stars she no longer believed in, begging they would not take him from her. The gates of Mordaxa opened with a deep growl, as if the ancient stones themselves were warning him to turn back. Flames danced from cracks in the ground, and the wind smelled like ash and metal. Even the air burned thick and heavy with heat. But Ethan Cale, the lone human, stepped forward without hesitation. Above the cliffs, alien nobles watched from floating platforms, dressed in armor and silks, ready to witness his failure. They had seen many warriors enter Mordaxa. None returned. These caves did not test strength alone, they tested pain, memory, and fear. Only those with unshakable purpose survived, and most had none. But this human, he was different. Had no title, no army, no reason to die. And yet he had volunteered not for power, but for a rejected girl no one else wanted. The emperor sat upon a raised throne of black stone. Its expression was unreadable. The royal court murmured beside him, voices dripping with doubt and ridicule. A foolish creature sneered, a scaled diplomat. "He won't last an hour," said a tall-eyed priestess. "Let him burn," growled a jealous suitor from the Crimson Sons. Only one person in that crowd held their breath. Princess Ceraliah stood silently, her hands clenched at her side. Her heart beat like thunder inside her chest. She had been raised to stay quiet, to obey, to never dream. But now, someone had broken every rule for her. The watchers fell silent as Ethan entered the fire caves. Inside, darkness met heat. The walls glowed red, like veins of a living beast. Sharp crystals jutted from the ground, and boiling steam hissed from hidden holes. Ethan didn't stop. Each step brought him deeper into the heart of Mordaxa, where only the brave or the broken dared go. Suddenly, the walls shifted, his vision blurred. The cave began to speak. Not with voices, but with memories, echoes from his past, torn open and displayed like bleeding wounds. He saw Earth's battlefield. Again, the smog of burning cities, the screams of dying brothers. He saw his hands, bloody, trembling, unable to save them. Then came the worst. A small hand reaching up from the rubble, a child's voice calling him daddy, before fading into silence. Ethan dropped to his knees, breath crushed by grief that had never healed. His fists hit the ground in the fire, licked his skin, but he did not scream. He forced his eyes open, forced the memory back, one breath at a time. "I failed them," he whispered, "but I won't fail her." He stood again. The caves were not finished. Next came the beasts, burning creatures born from lava and shadow.
Ow!
One roared, taller than a tank, with eyes like molten glass. It charged with claws stretched wide, but Ethan rolled beneath it, grabbing a jagged crystal and driving it into the creature's leg. Fire burst from the wound, and the beast howled, crashing into the wall. Another beast struck from above, but Ethan leapt aside, slamming his back into a steaming rock. His skin blistered, pain shot through him like fire, but he stood again. Step by step, wound by wound, he pressed forward. On the cliffs above, the crowd watched in disbelief. "He's still alive?" a noble gasped. Struck the flame beast, another whispered. The emperor leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Impossible. Hours passed. Ethan collapsed near the glowing heartstone, a burning red gem pulsing with heat and light. He reached for it with shaking fingers. His skin sizzled as he touched it, but he did not let go. He pulled the stone free and fell backward, barely breathing. Then everything went quiet. Outside, the flames at the cave's entrance turned blue. The ancient sign that a challenger had survived. Its gasp spread across the cliffs. "He did it," someone whispered. "The human lives," another confirmed. The gates opened once more. Ethan stumbled out, holding the burning stone in his hand, his body burned and bleeding, but still standing. The crowd, once mocking, was now silent. Cerelia rushed forward before her father could stop her. She reached Ethan just before he fell, and caught him in her arms. He looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Did I pass?" She wanted to cry, but nodded. "You passed something no royal ever could." The Emperor stood slowly, voice calm but cold. "You completed the trial, human? But that only earns you one thing, the right to speak." Ethan forced himself up with Cerelia's help. He turned to the court, face burned, voice steady. "Then hear me," he said. "You all speak of power, of strength, of bloodlines. But none of you dared to face that cave for her, you judged. Her, without knowing her heart. I saw her courage before she even spoke. That is why I stood. It's not because I wanted a crown, but because I couldn't walk away." No one laughed this time, and for the first time the Emperor had no answer. But Cerelia smiled, not because she had been claimed, but because she had finally been seen. The healers begged him to rest, but Ethan refused. His body was covered in burns, cuts, and bruises, yet he stood like a soldier ready for war. The fire crystal he had taken from the heart of Mordaxa was now sealed in a glass case, glowing hot. Behind the Emperor's throne, everyone had seen what he survived, but the trial was only the beginning. The Emperor had not spoken a word since Ethan's speech, but everyone knew what came next. A second challenge. The Velmari royal court would not allow a human to claim a princess without facing a test of honor. Not just against the flames, but against tradition itself. A special trial, ancient and sacred, known only to those who stood before royalty. Cerelia's chamber echoed with silence as she sat near her window, fingers twisting together. She could still smell the burned cloth of his jacket, still see the pain in his eyes as he looked up and asked, "Did I pass?" And now her father remained quiet, hiding behind council whispers and closed doors. But the galaxy was already watching. News of the human survivals spread across systems. On distant moons, soldiers replayed the footage. On trading ships, workers raised glasses to his name. Even in places where humans were mocked, Ethan Cale's story had shaken everything. And in the Grand Temple of Velmaris, the Emperor finally rose to speak. "You completed the fire trial," he said coldly, looking down at Ethan who stood before him again, this time in ceremonial black, but blood alone cannot prove your worth. A murmur spread across the court. "The next test is one of the spirit," the Emperor declared. "You will be sent into the Temple of Echoes, where the voices of the ancients speak. You will enter alone, must return with one truth, no being." In this galaxy is spoken aloud. The crowd grew tense. The Temple of Echoes was feared even more than Mordaxa. Warriors had entered only to come out mad or broken. It was said the temple reached into your soul and exposed everything. Ethan didn't blink. "I accept." Before dawn, he was taken by shuttle to the black cliffs of the southern range. The temple stood like a forgotten shadow carved into the mountain. Doors of smooth, dark stone opened as he approached. Not by machine, but by will, sensing his presence pulling him in. He stepped through, and the entrance sealed behind him. Instantly, the world shifted. There was no fire here, no beasts. Only cold silence and a strange wind that whispered without a source. The walls glowed faintly with symbols he couldn't read, yet somehow understood. Each symbol seemed to tug at memories he didn't want to face. The deeper he walked, the heavier it became. Then the voices began. Not outside. Inside. "You left them?" came the voice of his fallen commander. "Act. You couldn't save your unit," said a child's voice, familiar and soft. "You think helping her will fix your guilt?" whispered his own voice, low and cruel. Ethan fell to his knees, gripping his head. The temple was showing him not just his past, but his fears, his shame, everything he buried deep beneath the surface. But he didn't scream. Instead, he spoke back. "I was afraid," he said aloud. "I failed people I loved, yes, but this is not about them. This is about her, about a girl no one believed in." The voices twisted, turned, and shifted. The air grew still. A single word echoed in his mind, truth, and then he saw her. Not in flesh, but in light, Cerelia, standing in the temple center, glowing like a dream. But this vision was different. Her shoulders were heavy with sadness. Her smile was forced. She wasn't the fragile princess the world saw. She was a soul longing to be heard. And in that moment, Ethan understood. He walked forward, not running, not fighting, just knowing. He touched the final stone at the heart of the temple. It flared with blue light. Outside, the doors opened once more. Ethan walked out, pale and sweating, but calm. In his hand was a simple metal ring. No gem, no power, just an old Velmari truth band, once given only by those who saw another soul. Back at the court, the nobles watched with narrowed eyes as he entered. The emperor raised a brow. "And what truth did the temple give you, human?" Ethan stepped forward. "The truth," he said, loud and clear, "is that she was never the weak one." The galaxy just never looked closely enough. The crowd went still. Even the emperor didn't speak for a moment. And Ciraleia, standing beside the throne, looked at him with eyes wide in wonder. No one had ever said such a thing about her. Not even she had dared to believe it. That day, something shifted in the stars. Not just for her, but for every being ever told they were too small to matter. She stared at him like he had spoken in a language no one else used. The court had returned to silence after Ethan's words echoed through the chamber. She was never the weak one. The galaxy just never looked closely enough. No alien had ever said such a thing, not to her, not about anyone like her. Most nobles praised bloodlines, power, and genetics. No one ever spoke of hearts. No one noticed pain unless it was convenient. But this human, this stranger, had walked through fire and mind storms only to stand beside a girl everyone else had left behind. That night, the palace held no banquets, no songs, only whispers. And in the quiet tower where the moonlight touched the glass walls, Ciraleia waited. She had asked for him to come. Ethan stepped into her private chamber, unsure what to expect. She stood by the window wearing soft robes of pale silver, her hair loose, her eyes tired but bright. He had never seen her without the weight of ceremony, and she had never seen him without blood on his face. For a moment they just looked at each other. "You're not what I expected," she said. Ethan tilted his head. "Most people expect a fool." "No," she replied. "I expected you to want something." He stepped closer, staying just beyond the light's edge. "Like, what? Power? Titles? Land?" she answered, her voice slow and unsure. "My hand comes with a crown. Many would die for that." "I didn't die," he said, a small smile on his lips. "Not yet." She looked down, folding her hands. "Then, why?" The question hung in the air like a blade. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed to the opposite side of the room and looked out the glass wall where the stars blinked like distant embers. "Because I saw someone who needed someone," he finally said. Serila frowned. "That's not a reason to risk your life." Oh, Ethan nodded, "But it's a reason to start caring." Silence settled again. She stepped forward, unsure, nervous. Her voice trembled slightly. "You don't know what I am," hit the Velmari. "Bloodlines are strange. We're different from humans. Bodies grow slower. We live longer. Some say our kind can't even feel love the same way." He turned to her. "Can you feel pain?" She blinked. "Of course." "Fear?" "Yes." "Loneliness?" She nodded, this time slower. "Then maybe love just takes longer," he said. Something cracked inside her, something she didn't understand. All her life, she'd been told she was unfit. Not just because of her size, but because she was too soft, too slow to adapt. Her tutors said she had no fire. Her father called her a gentle mistake. She began to believe it, but now, standing in front of a man who had no reason to lie, she felt something shift. "I don't know what love is," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied. "Not yet." She took another step, her voice more steady. "And if I never do?" Ethan walked forward too, stopping only when they were inches apart. "Then I'll still stand beside you, even if all you ever feel is peace." That word hit her like thunder. Peace, no one had ever offered that. Before, she didn't kiss him. She didn't fall into his arms. She simply placed her hand over his heart and stayed there, feeling the beat that had survived fire, survived fear, survived the judgment of 1,000 eyes. I used to think I was born for silence, she said softly. You weren't, Ethan replied, resting his hand gently on hers. I think I was born to be seen, she whispered, and now you are. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped not in romance but in something deeper. The beginning of understanding, the start of trust. Somewhere outside, in the distant chambers of the court, angry voices argued about blood, purity, and rules. Some demanded the human be removed. Others feared what his actions had started, because something was happening not just in the palace, but across the stars. Young alien girls who once feared rejection now replayed Cerelia's story in secret. Noble sons began asking questions their fathers didn't like. And on planets where humans were mocked, some aliens started looking at them with new eyes. But in that quiet tower, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Cerelia no longer felt like a shadow, and Ethan no longer carried his guilt alone. They were not yet in love, but they were no longer alone in the dark. The first sign of trouble didn't come from Velmar, it came from the stars. Beyond, a formal message was received by the Emperor's court, marked with the red seal of the Zarkon High Lords, rulers of 20 powerful systems. The message was short, cold, and dangerous. The union between a human and Velmari royal must be reconsidered. This threatens the balance of noble bloodlines. That was only the beginning. Within days, more warnings arrived from the Calthex Empire, the Shiren Priest Kings, and even the neutral Gorlari trade rings. One by one, powerful alien factions declared that if the Emperor allowed this alliance to continue, they would cut diplomatic ties or worse. The Emperor read the final message in silence, his hands gripping the arms of his throne. Around him, the nobles shouted with panic. They will destroy our trade routes. Our name will be mocked across every system. He must be removed. This human is a virus. Cerelia stood nearby, watching their fear turn into rage. Not once did anyone ask what she wanted. Not once did anyone speak her name. Until she stepped forward. Her voice rang through the throne room, louder than it had ever been before. I will speak. The room froze. Her father turned slowly. You will speak only if I am not a child, she said, cutting him off. I am the heir to Velmaris, and this is my choice. The nobles hissed with disbelief. One of them, a bloated lord from the ice colonies, spat the words, "This human bewitched her." Another shouted, "He's using her to take our throne." A priestess hissed, "She is not of proper mind, corrupted by earth blood." Ethan stood near the doors, silent, unmoved by their words. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't defend himself. This wasn't his battle now, it was hers. Cerelia stepped into the center of the hall. I lived my entire life as a decoration, she said, a trophy passed between traditions and titles. I was told who I could be, what I should feel, and who I was allowed to dream of, the nobles muttered, shifting uncomfortably. But none of you stood for me. She continued, her voice stronger, not when the court laughed. Not when I was humiliated in front of the galaxy. Only one man stepped forward, not for power, not for glory, but because he saw me. She turned and looked at Ethan. He risked death in the flames of Mordaxa. He faced the truth inside the Temple of Echoes. And he did it not for a throne, but for me. Silence fell again, heavy and deep. But something unexpected happened. One of the younger nobles, a girl no older than Cerelia, stepped forward. Her name was Alira, heir to the Zever cluster, known for its warriors. She raised her voice. I saw the broadcast. I saw how he looked at her. It was not ambition, that was devotion. We should not fear this alliance. We should learn from it. Gasps spread through the chamber. Then another voice. It's time from a noble of the Talrex moons. And then another soon. Dozens of young royals stood with Cerelia, but not all were moved. The Emperor stood, his voice cold as the edge of a blade. Galaxy watches us. The bloodlines are older than laws. If I allow this union, I risk war. Yet if I deny it, I destroy my daughter's spirit. He walked slowly down the steps of his throne, stopping before Cerelia. You have chosen him, he said. She nodded. You would give up comfort, favor, and tradition to walk beside a man who has nothing. I would give up everything, she said, because for the first time in my life, I was seen. The Emperor turned to Ethan, then prove to me once more that your heart is not born of greed. He reached behind his throne and held out a blade. Take this and swear, before all witnesses, that you seek no crown, no army, no empire. Only her. Ethan stepped forward. He took the blade, pressed it lightly to his palm, let a single drop of blood fall to the floor. I swear, he said, voice steady, I will never sit on a throne built on fear, ask only to walk beside her, not above her. The Emperor looked into his eyes for a long time. Then he turned away and raised his hand. The court bowed in stunned silence. The union was approved, but across the galaxy, rage boiled in shadowed corners. Not all accepted peace, and some had already begun preparing for war. The explosion shook the skies just as the sun touched the horizon. Ceremonial drums fell silent. The wedding banners, once glowing above the Velmari Palace, flickered and vanished. Soldiers scrambled into formation. The stars above turned red. As warning signals echoed through the capital's towers, an enemy fleet had arrived, uninvited, unwanted, and fully armed, across the galaxy. Powerful nobles who had refused to accept the union of a human and an alien princess had formed a secret alliance. They waited until the last moment, just when the wedding was to begin, to strike. They had one goal: destroy the bond before it became law. Inside the palace, Cerelia stood at the edge of the balcony, her wedding dress made of starlight silk. The building trembled beneath her feet. She turned, calm but firm, and walked straight to the war table. The guards panicked, unsure of what to do. But Ethan had already moved. He stood by the main command console, his old soldier's instinct already awake. He pressed buttons quickly, sending out shield orders, rerouting power to defense systems, and activating ancient towers that had not fired in decades. You shouldn't be here. One noble growled at him. You're not royal. This isn't your place. Ethan didn't even look up. It is now. Cerelia reached his side and spoke to the room. These ships didn't come for battle. They came for fear. They are afraid of change. Afraid of love that does not obey rules. The Emperor, surprisingly silent until now, stepped out in full armor. Then let them fear us, he said. He walked to Ethan and handed him the control to the outer fleet, a symbol of full command trust. Ethan looked down at the device in his hand, then at Cerelia. You sure about this? He asked. She smiled softly. You flew through fire for me. Let's see how far you can fly now. In orbit, enemy ships moved fast, but they were not ready for what came next. Ethan launched every drone in the defense grid. He used old Earth tactics mixed with Velmari technology, a style no alien army had ever seen. Ships darted between asteroid belts, missiles curved through gravity traps, and decoy signals confused enemy radars. Inside the palace, Cerelia activated a protocol hidden even from the Council, a secret passed only to Velmari heirs. It released the ancient crystal core buried beneath the capital, sending a blast of energy into the sky, knocking out 20 enemy cruisers in seconds. The nobles watched from the command center, stunned. They fight as one, someone whispered. But the battle was not over. The enemy's flagship broke through the outer defense line. Its cannon locked onto the palace. One hit would destroy everything. Ethan ran to the transport bay. Cerelia followed. I'm going with you, she said before he could speak. I can't promise we'll make it back, he replied. I didn't ask for promises, she said, stepping beside him. They launched in a small fighter, cutting through the battlefield like a spark. Lasers screamed past them. Debris flew in every direction. But together, they reached the flagship, the enemy commander. A horned alien noble named Varkle met them in the main chamber, sword in hand. You polluted her bloodline, he hissed. You broke tradition? Ethan stepped forward, unarmed. No, he said. I saved it. Urkel lunged. The fight was short, brutal, and silent. In the end, Ethan stood with the sword in his hand, and Verkel lay on the floor, defeated. He didn't finish him. Instead, he turned to the control panel and shut down the enemy fleet from within. Back on Velmaris, skies cleared. The sun rose again. The wedding took place under open stars, the guests from 100 species watching. Ethan and Seralia stood together, not as symbols of power, but as proof of something rare, that unity could rise from difference, that love could survive fear, and that even in a galaxy filled with war, someone could still choose peace. Years later, the story of the human and the tiny alien princess would spread far beyond their system. It would inspire more than alliances. It would create a new kind of empire, not built on conquest, but on choice.